Start. My name is Councillor Ros Smith and I chair this meeting, and Councillor John Sheary is my deputy chair. The first item that we have on our agenda this afternoon is apologies for absence and temporary appointments. I don't believe there are any, are there? Just to confirm.
Sarge Malik sends his apologies.
Right, and we haven't got any temporary appointments.
He hasn't been able to find a temporary appointment on this occasion. No.
Okay, that's a shame. Right, okay, thank you, that's noted. Are there any declarations of interest anybody would like to make this afternoon before we start? If there is something as we go along during the meeting that you feel you ought to declare as an interest, then please indicate. Thank you. Is that right? Thanks, David. The next item is item 3, minutes from our last meeting, and these are on page 7 to 14. I'll page them as we go through, and then if anybody indicates they want something to raise something on those minutes, please. Page 7, page 8, 9, 10, and 11. I think there was one action, was there, Jack, on page 9, which was the head of corporate finance, that she would get the strategic financing and investment manager to answer the question as to precise returns and variation interest rates on a fixed term deposits outlined in Annex 4. Do we know if that's been done?
So it had responded to that offline, I think, about some confidentiality issues about including, but we will include something in the outturn report which shows the average rate of interest. So we are responding as far as we can to that in the next report that's published.
If that explanation, we'll note that. Thank you.
I've recommended that Tim bring his answer verbally to the next meeting, which he'll be present at, which I think will be in July. Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Right. So are you happy for me to sign those minutes? Yes. Thank you very much. I will sign those minutes when I have a chance this afternoon. The next item is petitions and public address. I don't believe we have any this afternoon, but I'm looking forward to committee members joining in. Perhaps when you first speak, you just give your name when you first speak, so that we have that on record too. And those listening attentively and watching avidly will know who is addressing the chair in the afternoon. Thank you. So agenda item number 5, Chief Internal Auditor's Annual Report, starting on page 15. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, this is the, is that really loud? It is loud, isn't it? Shall I sit back? Does that help? Yeah, so this is the annual report of the Chief Internal Auditor for 25-26. Very pleased to note my overall opinion is satisfactory. That's a positive opinion on the overall control environment and for governance, risk management, yeah, and for control. You'll note we do have 4 red reports within the year, which obviously form part of that opinion. But I'm very satisfied for each of those in terms of the robustness of the management response and the action plans in place to address those weaknesses identified. And also in bringing the opinion together, we have actually issued more green reports this year, which is in table 37. So again, positive. Take this part of the year to confirm to the committee that I've operated in accordance with the global internal audit standards. And you'll recall back in January, we did a self-assessment to make sure that we are compliant, and I've reported that back to yourselves. Also in accordance with professional standards, through the annual report, I need to notify you as a committee that I've had no limitations placed on the scope of my work, which I have not, and that I feel that I'm able to operate independently within the organisation. The annual report obviously sets out the methodology for how I resource and the basis of the audit opinion. We did complete 28 audits over the year. You'll recall in Q1 there were some resourcing issues, and that has, we've been, trying to sort of catch up with some of that during the year. But we have still delivered the audits I needed to deliver that opinion. The plan's intended to be dynamic and flexible to change, and I've brought amendments back to you. And the revised plan has been completed by the end of the year, with the exception of 2 that are at draft report, and they'll be finalised. But the work from that and the opinion has included that. Just one thing on the one area of the report, paragraph 30. Part of my annual opinion is to include the Hampshire opinion on the IBC partnership for delivering offshore of our key financial systems. In the report, I said I hadn't received their assurance report. I received that at the end of last week. So I can now update the committee that there were some exceptions within the report, but there was no material concern and nothing that hadn't been addressed. So in terms of their conclusion, it's suitably designed, controlled effectively. That also affects an item later on when and Anita will update on in terms of the annual governance statement. Just one addition to the annual reporting for this year, slightly different from the one you saw last year, is paragraph 38. So as part of professional standards now, we're supposed to be bringing together some of the key themes and root causes. So that's included in there. And quite interestingly, bringing that all together, you'll note there's not one underlying root cause, but actually there's often multiple factor root causes. Majority we're finding is relating to process design and consistency, but a lot of it is governance and oversight, and that's where the improvements are needed. Appendix 3, obviously is all the executive summaries, not for the whole year, but since I last brought them to you in January. And there's a couple that I just want to bring to your attention. There's obviously 2 red reports in there, bring your own device. That's quite a, that's, you know, obviously just that area. That's been virtually all implemented now. There are 3 actions still outstanding, but they will be completed within the next week or so. I've had assurances today. The other one is bridges management. That's concluded as overall red. And in line with our normal process, I'd recommend that we bring it as a red report to the audit working group, and that will give you opportunities as members to see the full audit report and call officers in. In line with that, I would probably also recommend you bring in highways contract management, which is an amber, but if you see both detailed reports, there's a lot of crossover between them. So I think that would be my comments around the appendices. I think that's probably it for the introduction, and over to questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Sarah. I'm going to be using first names this afternoon. Is that okay with everybody? Just to make sure. I presumed it. Right. I think we've got Gavin McLaughlin first. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Gavin McLaughlin, you asked us to introduce ourselves first. Councillor for Benson and Cromarsh. I'm just very interested in how in Appendix 3 we go about actually giving an overall red, amber, green status to each. I know it's described at the end, but it seems to me that, for example, if you look at ICT backups on page 35, you've got 2 elements which are amber, which have 3 priority 2 management actions and 1 green operational priority 2, but overall it's viewed as being green. And that's the case in other areas as well. Sometimes, for example, under database security, you can see that actually the amber status there actually reflects the majority of the the tasks that are actually at amber. So there seems to be a little bit of an inequity in terms of how some of these are being judged and ranked.
So none of this is about numbers. So none of it is like scientific in that, 6 of these actions will make sure this is an amber. This is about the overall assessment of our assessment of, whether to this it represents green, amber, red. Overall, sometimes there is ones that you think, a lot of them fall into amber overall. There's a lot of audits that do that. We make sure the reds are really, we reserve that for when absolutely the system of internal control is just not sufficient at all and we're at massive risk. So amber, there's quite a sliding scale of that. We used to have, many years ago, we used to have an opinion rating which was based on not colour gradings, but it was on, it was like satisfactory, you know, and that was over 4 categories. So then there was always the balance of, then, yeah, what makes it to the top one and so on. The red, amber, green has worked very, very well for us in terms of it's aligning with a lot of other senior management reporting, you know, the RAG status. It's really hard because when we've determined it as an amber, it's really around our professional assessment. So it's certainly not determined by management or the services. It's what we say, actually, that falls within our categories. So it's quite hard to describe, but I have 2 audit managers across the process that make sure there is that consistency. And it's about knowing some of the detail in the background. And actually, we know what a red, amber, green looks like. Is that?
So you're basically saying, trust us, we know what we're doing. And even though the numbers don't actually say what the overall says, we know what we're talking about and therefore butt out, which is fine.
I suppose I would want to add to that it's also when we're assessed.
Yeah.
They look at that in a lot of detail. They look right from the working papers and how we've evidenced what our findings are, right through to how we make our assessments, how we grade our management actions, how we grade the overall. And you know, we've always done very, very well in our assessments. So you do have that assurance that we're applying the global standards, we're applying our knowledge of the organisation, and it's just, so it's not a butt out, but that's probably the best I can explain it.
Thank you for that, Sarah. I mean, I think it is the fact that we have had SIPFA I was going to say investigation, but I guess it was, you know, accreditation, and that included a lengthy interview with myself as well too, to actually show how robust our internal audit is and how highly it is regarded actually nationally too. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll take Councillor Button and then Councillor Rawlings, was it? And Councillor Fry, right, okay. Thank you, that order. Thank you,
I'm Councillor Ron Backstone from Grove. I think it's been a very good report, and I picked up bridge management, but you've already picked that up. In your list of targets, it says percentage of agreed management actions would be 90% of the target would be 90%. But when I looked at the breakdown, quite a lot weren't implemented. So I'm wondering, it says 63% implemented. So does that mean you didn't miss you missed your target, or does it mean that really, since quite a few weren't due yet, the target was actually achieved? I found that a bit confusing.
With the management action implementation, we will always add on the implemented and the not yet due. So the 63 plus the 8%. There is always been, ever since probably I was even born, this target of 90%, because that's what we want to achieve as an organisation. In reality, it sits about between the 70 and 80%. And when it's at that figure, I'm comfortable as a head of audit. When it starts to dip below that, or might dip in a certain service area, we're talking to the directors. I mean, it's not quite as thing as that, because there might be really good reasons why there's a delay in implementation and they're wanting to get it right. But you've got to have some metric to think, actually, you know, what's going on here. So the 63 plus the 8 not due. And often when we're just finalising these reports, you get a load of audit reports loaded onto the system and they're coming up as that in their status.
Councillor Rawlings next, and then Councillor Fry, please.
Thank you. I'm Lee Rawlings, representing Sonning and Henley South. Yeah, my questions are around the bridge audit. I was wondering when that was concluded. It seems a pretty shocking outturn with red all down the line. I'm concerned as to how bad that situation is, how far in arrears the inspections actually are, and what level of risk is exposed thereby, because this seems to be, on the face of it, a really serious risk. And I'm also interested in terms of management, whether there is a separation of powers as between those who are charged with inspection and safety and those who are charged with operations and effecting works. Because it seems to me that if you cross over those two areas, there is a slight risk of different motivations. If you're responsible for delivery and works, you want to see a good set of outcomes. If you're concerned about safety, you want to see the right level of inspection and brutally honest reports if that's what's necessary. Thank you.
So yeah, with the bridges audit, it is a red report. So like you say, there's a significant level of risk that's been identified. It was when I put the audit for highways contract management audit in the plan, it was the bridges element was actually requested by the director because there were some concerns and wanted assurance. The audit, you asked when the audit was completed. We did the majority of the field work January through to middle of March. The audit report was finalised, was it just before the end of April? There was a need obviously to develop quite a robust action plan. And I am very confident with the organisation's response to this. So that's really positive. I think there would be some benefit, like I say, in calling that one in alongside the highways contract management to the same meeting of the audit working group. And when you see that, and I think we could probably suggest the September meeting, if that's okay with members, but when you see that, you'll be able to then, the detailed audit report will give you some of those metrics around the principal inspection programme and how that's, in terms of those metrics around what's being completed and what hasn't, the general inspection programme. And it would be better for those officers to obviously talk to you about that. But I can say there are two types of inspections, and one of them is carried out by our contractors, and we obviously have to monitor and have oversight of that. And then the other inspections are in-house. And again, the audit has obviously picked up issues around that. So I think for you to see the full audit reports will be very beneficial, and it will give you a lot more. The executive summary doesn't give you all of the metrics you're probably looking for.
Well, it's a very recent.
The microphone, please. Sorry,
From what you found, is this seems to be a bit echoey. From what you found, is this a very recent problem because of, I don't know, gaps in resources or something, or is it something that's been around for a long time and nobody's grappled with?
It's an audit where we haven't done a detailed bridges audit before. We've always looked around the delivery of major infrastructure and things, but we haven't done a detailed one of it. We've obviously looked at it at a point in time. There has been a gap with I'm trying to think what the job title is, but below the head of services that have been in charge of the bridges programme. So there's been a gap in resource that they've not been able to recruit to and fill. But again, the audit report would give you the detail on that, and I think officers would be able to answer some of those questions. And I think September's quite timely, that it's not too long, but it's also given them a chance to actually implement some of the more immediate actions that need to be implemented.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Lee Rawlings, and thank you, Sarah, for the explanation as well too. I've got 4 more speakers on this item. We'll take Councillor James Fry and John Sheary, Gavin McClelland, and then David. That's okay.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I represent Summertown and Walton Manor. I've got 3. 2 are very small questions, I think. Maybe they're all small. If I go through in order, on page 19, under internal internal control, you talk about what's now called the Southern Internal Audit Partnership. Am I right in understanding that it gives you economies of scale because the different authorities have some common concerns, common interess, and that's why we're part? You mentioned 3 more councils joined, but then you say that partners can separately take a view on additional risk-based pieces of assurance work that could be commissioned. So I just wonder what's the relationship with them. Maybe I'll give you that first and then I'll come back with the other two.
Sorry, can we have all three questions because we
Okay.
conscious of time. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is under employee relations. This is the most trivial. I think 1 + 10 is 11. In the table there, it's shown as 10, that's all. And the one missing one is the only priority one management action. That's the trivial point, but there is a 1 there. I don't know which is the error. Okay, and then the final one is on insurance, pages 44, 45. I can understand where you've got external insurance, but the implication seems to be that you talk about liability risks are sufficiently protected also by alternative methods. I just wonder, do you have access to actuarial advice about probabilities of risks? I just wonder how you manage risks that are not managed through an external insurance company. Thank you.
Right. So I'll take the first question then. So just to clarify the thing around the IBC, that's paragraph 29 of page 19. So we've obviously used the partnership of the Hampshire IBC partnership to deliver the key financial systems, and their auditor is the South Internal Audit Partnership. They actually use an external firm to provide their assurance. They use an external audit firm to do the work, but it was always set up within the contract that obviously what they do, they provide assurance on, and the key controls, we provide assurance on anything that we do within the organisation, you know, what the managers do. So it's purely because of that happens to be their audit arrangements. And then the one on the employee relations, can I get Kath?
Yeah, it looks as though that priority one action hasn't been reflected in the status table. So there was 1 priority 1 action and 17 priority 2. So I'll just have a look and see what's happened with that one. So, okay. And then
We're going to Kathy to answer your question on the insurance.
Hi, it's Kathy Wilcox, Head of Corporate Finance. So yeah, so obviously the insurance team keep an overview of controls and adherence to those across the council. As following the finance redesign last year, we've got a additional post in there now who's actively looking at reporting on and looking at risk across the whole council. So obviously that information is tracked and then it's discussed with the brokers as part of each of the retender of the insurance contract. So I think all of that is picked up and monitored by the insurance team throughout the year.
John, Siri, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to recognise the opinion and the reassurances Sarah has provided to us in relation to those status of amber and red and so forth. I draw the committee's attention to page 27. I think that the first part of the questions that I have got is we've got a few overdues in there. I know it is we backwards looking into this. If we could have reassurances that those are not just numbers, but we actively working through those ones. And second, I draw your attention to page 27 to 29, and we have got a few reds in there and an amber as well. I think partly it is repeated, but I'm gonna draw your attention that we do need to bring in high-risk contract management into audit working group. I think is important. So although it is amber, I think is highlighted as well. I recognize that. At the same time, we do need to bring in safeguarding transport into the working group as well as the breach management, which is on page 53. I think that those are reds in there. That's it. Thank you.
Just on the safeguarding transport one, that did go to AWG at the last meeting.
Yes.
And we're going to have
looked
them
it up.
come back. They'll be coming back in October. So just to clarify that. In terms of on the overdue actions, I think there's a couple of things to bring out here. In terms of our process, we've obviously got a system that monitors, chases automatically officers for updates. The team also have their watch list of the ones sort of which need soft chasing. And we have a process every month where every director gets a list of their actions, the ones that are overdue. And sometimes there's some good reasons for them being overdue, but we also list the ones where people are changing the dates. And normally that's for a very, very valid reason, but it gives those directors that oversight and overview of that. So I get to see through those responses, ones that we need to actually, you know, maybe we need to reach out support, or we need to flag in any scenario. So assurances that we've got quite a good, you know, we can't spend all our time on follow-up, but it is important. There's no point doing the work in the first place if things aren't implemented. But I think it's an opportune time to start. I've had some conversations with both the chair and also with Councillor Fry about some maybe a bit more improved reporting to the committee on the management actions. And I know Councillor Fry, he's been very supportive in terms of a bit more detail without giving you pages and pages and reams of open actions. We deal with hundreds and hundreds of actions across the reports. And one of the things you get from me in September and January is you get a list of all the audits, which shows the year, and that can show you obviously, well, why is something outstanding from 2 years ago, and it gives you numbers implemented and partially. But it doesn't give you anything more on some of the more long outstanding ones. So I know Councillor Fry and Ros are keen for us to, you know, maybe a little bit more information on this. And what I'd like to propose is I'll bring something back to the September committee, which will report on, not focusing on all of the ones that are overdue. They might be slightly overdue, and that's okay, but any that are overdue by a certain amount of time. We could maybe say 9 months since the original target date or something like that. I'll look at what's sensible, bring it back to you in September. So you've got a bit more information to assure yourself, and you can also get some more updates from officers. Is that helpful?
So that was helpful. And I do recall that over the years with AMG, if we have had delayed finishing off of the priorities and actions that have been identified, we actually have called the director and or the cabinet member in to not AWG but to the committee to answer questions from committee members as to why the delays are happening with the actions being implemented. Right, I have Councillor Gavin McCockley next, then David, and then I understand Lee Rawlings would like another question too. Thank you.
Having asked one question, and in the interest of time, I'm just in the process of emailing Sarah with my other question.
Well, she's looking forward to that.
Thank you.
David.
Thank you, Chair. David Ingley, Councillor for the Alderbury Bloxman Bodycott Division. Thank you very much for the report. It's really excellent and really sort of shows very clearly the level of risk in each item. So thank you for that. I was wanting to ask a specific question about the database security item on page 37, which is listed as an amber item. There's just a sentence in there that's saying that some security risks have been identified which need to be addressed. Obviously, privacy concerns are paramount when we're dealing with databases and the recording of personal data. So my question is, to what extent can we be confident that those sorts of issues are not being compromised by these supposed security risks referred to in the paper?
I don't have my IT auditor here, but any that present that immediate risk, we deal with the management action plan quite differently, and actually got a very good relationship with IT in terms of knowing exactly what needs to be. We need to close this gap straight away, and that will be reflected within the report. I have to say, in terms of the implement of these actions, I know even these ones that are partially implemented have moved on since I've done the papers, and I think all I can say, actually, I think they're really on top of their management action implementation within IT. So it's just about us, like you say, making sure that the ones that do present an immediate risk are addressed straight away.
And Councillor Rawlings, you had another question.
Just a very small point. Appendix 1, we list the number of management actions agreed. To my mind, it would be helpful in a column to have the number overdue. Just as a tabular thing, as a column. I know it's all in there in the reported, but if it was just in a column alongside the actions agreed, I think it would jump more readily. Just a small suggestion.
We'll fit that in, and we will. Okay. Right, thank you. So we now come to recommendations committee, if we could, unless there's any other questions or comments that want to be made. Sarah, was there anything else you wanted to add this afternoon on this report? No? Okay, thank you. Right, so the committee is asked to consider endorse this annual report. I think we can do from the comments that received this afternoon. Thank you for that. But we'd like to make a recommendation as well too, that 2 reports are taken to AWG for the September meeting. That's the audit working group, for a more in-depth look at those audit reports and discussion with the team members, director, and possibly the cabinet member. I think there too, new cabinet member. Yeah, that would be good. I did alert her today actually at lunchtime to say that she will be required, I think, for that meeting. Okay, thank you. So we'll then move on to, if those are all agreements, right, thank you. So can we now move on to agenda item 6? And over to you again, Sarah, I believe.
So this presents the internal audit strategy now for the plan, the year ahead. And in July, I'll bring you a separate plan for the counter fraud activity. It presents the methodology for developing the plan, and the plan's been approved by Lorna Baxter. You'll note that it's been written in a slightly different way this year, and I've tried to emphasise the necessity to remain flexible and responsible to the emerging risks and the sort of the changing priorities for assurance that we're going to need over LGR. For both audit and counter fraud, we're going to have to work quite smartly and a lot differently to how we do to one, sort of provide assurance around that business as usual, the continuing assurance, but also in terms of the development design of new governance arrangements and transition risk of major services to whatever the organisational arrangements will look like once we've had the decision on LGR. So I kept the planned audit days as flexible as I can. The wish list from the organisation and also from myself and the team of what we're wanting to look at is always quite high, and to balance that is quite a challenge. But hopefully, you know, certainly for September and the January update, as these things evolve, I'll start to be able to bring back a more definitive idea of what LGR assurance needs to look like. I refer to the appendices. So Appendix 1 is the performance indicators for 25-26. They remain unchanged, and I regularly report back to you during the year on achievement of those. Appendix 2 is obviously the plan, and I've just included an Appendix 3, a structure chart of the team, just for information, so hopefully that's helpful. So I'll pass over to questions.
Right, thank you. I think the report is excellent, and I think you're absolutely right. We do need, as an organisation, to be flexible with regard to local government organisation. And I note the times that you have, days that you have proposed, a split of audit activity for 26-27. And as we can see, it's 35% is to do with LGR, local government reorganisation. That really is a sizable chunk, isn't it? It really is, of our audit time. The other thing that we can just note as well are the 6 service objectives that are on page 63, which I think is worth noting. And I would now just open for any questions or comments. Thank you. Rawlings has his hand up first.
Yeah, in terms of local government reorganisation, from the evidence of what we've seen in the early decisions by government, it appears that they've stepped away from the 500,000 minimum that they set out before, and the demonstrated evidence is that they're putting in place new unitaries with smaller size, around 300,000 or less in some cases. That, it seems to me, begs the question that there's more likelihood coming down on the suggestion that it may not be one Oxfordshire. And if that's the case, there is going to be some separation that is required. And I don't know how far directors and departments have thought about segmentation by district, so that they have the preparations in place to be able to deal with that. But as an internal audit and a preparation issue, it seems to me something relevant to be thinking about.
Would you like to come in at this point? Thank you.
Thank you. Just to introduce myself, Anita Bradley, Director of Law and Governance and Council's Monitoring Officer. I'm pleased to be working with the committee again this year. In terms of what the government have said in relation to the 500,000 figure, they have said that every decision is on a case-by-case basis. So, it's beholden on the Secretary of State to make whatever decisions they wish to, having considered all of the evidence. And so I can't make any comment as to what the likely size is going to be or not. But in terms of the work that we're doing, yes, we've considered that, but at the moment, the concentration is on each authority, whether it be the county council or the district authorities, baselining their own data so that the quality of the data that we then use to either think about aggregation or disaggregation based on what's coming forward as the Minded To decision, which is still expected in July, then that work puts us in a good position across the board. So that's been the concentration to date. But in all of the work that led up to the proposals going in, the county council was working closely with the districts as required and requested to ensure that the proposals went in, had some consideration of the disaggregation, because if it was a unitary authority or a 3 unitary authority, obviously they were seeking that information from us. So as far as I'm aware, and I haven't heard anything to the contrary, we shared openly all of our information and data in relation to that through appropriate channels and with the data sharing agreements in place. But at the moment, we're not at the position where we're sharing personal data, we're sharing principles and baselining. So it is very much something that's in our thinking, and no one has a closed mind as to whatever the proposal may or may not be that we're expected to address. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
So all our data is flagged by district and it's all set, ready to go.
I can't give you that assurance across the whole of the people directorates. I don't have that personal knowledge, but you wouldn't necessarily flag it by district. You'd have to have a discussion on how you would provide a service across the footprint of whatever unitary council would come forward. So I can't give you that assurance personally, but I don't believe that's the way it would be approached in the initial consideration of aggregation and disaggregation.
Thank you. I think it's what they commonly known as the Donald Rumsfeld, the known unknown, still at the moment. Did you want to add anything to that, Sarah, at all?
And obviously, from the internal audit and fraud perspective, we've obviously got to build the relationships with the districts, as whatever the model will look like, a combined effort of how we do this is critical. And last week I was part of the first of the sort of the working group of the heads of audit, the heads of the counter fraud functions across all of the parties currently involved. And so we're already, like Anita says, starting to do that data sharing just in terms of our own provision, but then starting to work together around risks of aggregation, disaggregation and whatever. So it's not much, but it's a little bit of assurance about how we're not all sat around waiting for the decision to come along.
And just to add to that, obviously there is also a finance and audit. One of the work streams is a finance and audit work stream where we're working with the Section 151 officers from across all of the districts to look at all of the systems issues that people have got now, what that would mean in various things. So we're not actually working on the disaggregation at this stage, but the baselining is getting us to a point where we understand what the issues would be and what we would need to do in the scenario that we did need to disaggregate. So there's a active working group that's meeting regularly from finance and audit. We're starting to think about things like how we disaggregate the funding in the first year of the operation of the new councils, things like just what would you do, how will you be safe and legal from a sort of financial systems, being able to make payments, being able to run your payroll, all of that on from day one of the new council. So as Sarah said, it's sort of work in progress for the moment, because we're really conscious that we don't want to do abortive work that's not required either, pending the minded to decision. But there's a lot of work going on across working groups across the whole of all the councils.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I draw members back to our plan for 26-27, which is sort of laid out from 69 onwards, and the audit assessments needs are given a high or medium priority. I think that's would be right, wouldn't it? Yes. It's good to see that we've got some of the cross-cutting capital programme delivery assurance being looked at again, the housing structure as well too, and there was one of that also the safeguarding transport follow-up, which I think is an important one that is marked as high. I think John, my colleague, mentioned it actually this afternoon as well too, and also the Section 106 improvement programme as well. This audit was deferred from 25-26, as you know, and is now back in for the audit for this plan for this year. Are there any other comments or issues people want to raise? Yes, Councillor Backstone.
Just a quick question, I think. In this plan, would it be right to assume that we probably will manage to do most of the high actions, but the medium, we will hope to do most of the high actions, but probably with LGR and everything else, the medium actions are likely to drop off the plan?
Yeah, some of these may drop off the plan. I'm hoping not, because actually some of even the medium ones will put us in good position for transferring things to a new organisation. I think there's some that I brought in my previous report that you think if you were just focusing an audit plan now on only LGR transition risk, and you go for these great big things, so I'm not saying look at the lower level things, but some of the other really important services, they still, it's really good to get your house in order, to get your control environment right, to get everything prepared. So I'm hoping there won't be too much, but you are right that we don't know what's going to be around the corner with LGR assurance, and it might trump some of these, yeah.
In addition to the plan that we've got here, we can also, internal audit can also respond to directors or senior management request for an audit if there is something that is critical that they see as urgent as well. Is that right?
Yeah, so even today I've had a request for something to be added to the audit plan. Doesn't mean to say I'll be adding it to audit plan. You need to consider, you know, and actually that's a good example of one where I think we can just provide some controls advice and support and more advisory than we need to things. So for me, it's a constant balance of actually, you know, there's lots of things everybody wants you to look at, but we have to prioritise.
That shows what high regard actually senior management does have actually for internal audit. Sorry, Councillor Fry.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one question. In Annex 2, I notice in periodic reviews that there's an internal independent review every 2 or 3 years into the effectiveness of internal audit by the monitoring officer. But then in external assessment, you talk about it being undertaken every 5 years. Is there a standard for this among councils, or why is it longer interval than for the internal one? Thank you.
So the external one, the standard is every 5 years, but we're expected to self-assess obviously each year, and I'm supposed to bring those results back to you, which I did in January. And that's what it says within the global internal audit standards, that external assessment should be at in that regularity. The actual monitoring officer review, the effectiveness of internal audit, is not a requirement anymore. It used to be many years ago. It was something the monitoring officer had to complete annually, and then that dropped away. Can't remember quite when, but a good few years back. But it was the decision of Lorna, but also of Anita. I think it was just when you were coming in actually, that it's a really good thing to have. We probably don't need it annually. It's very different from the external assessment, which looks very much detail about our delivery and our evidence and how we do things. But the monitoring officer is obviously reaching out to those key directors across the organisation to see, you know, do they value internal audit? Are we adding value? Are we providing robust assurance? So I don't know. And we decided it would just be every 3 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to add that in my role as monitoring officer, I have the ability to look across the whole of the organisation. So it kind of puts me in that kind of independent position where I can form a view as to whether, you know, we are effective across the whole of the organisation. So although Sarah and I are colleagues, we provide professional challenge to one another.
Right, thank you. Committee is asked to note the internal audit strategy and plan for 26-27. And I think we have commented on it and highlighted things. So I'd like to get committee's approval to agree that wording. Thank you for that recommendation. Thank you. So we'll then move on to the internal audit charter for 26-27. And I think we've seen this before, haven't we, last year? So members might recall, I think it was one of the first things actually new members saw in June of last year. So this is pages 77 to 96. Thank you.
Sorry, me again. So last year I did present the annual charter to you for approval. We do this every year. Again, it's standards driven. Last year there were quite some changes to it because of the introduction of the new global internal audit standards. So what you saw there was quite a refreshed version. This year I've made no amendments ever to update job titles and, you know, sort of a couple of cosmetic changes. So it's broadly what you saw at the June 2025 committee. And hopefully it's clear in terms of what it sets out to do for us. I need to present that to you for your approval. It's already been approved by Lorna Baxter. I also include the quality assurance improvement plan. That's a requirement for me to have. I don't need to present that, but I think that's just useful for you to see some of that, the background behind that. So I think that's all I have for an introduction.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? I've got one, if I may, for the committee. On page 85, it clearly puts out about 11 bullet points there. Starting on page 85, the Audit and Governance Committee's oversight as well, which is really important. It's another independent angle to getting our internal audit right. So just to make members aware, that's part of your duty as being on this committee, please. Thank you. That includes our external observers as well too. Thank you. Right, are there any comments or questions that anybody wants on the internal audit charter? I'm not seeing any, so I think I will take it that members have read it and agree with it. Thank you very much indeed, Sarah, for the charter. It's a useful thing to have. It gives the mandate as well for you yourself and your team. So thank you. And I'd like to record our thanks to Sarah, our internal auditor, and all of the internal audit team and fraud investigation team as well for the work that we've done over last year and the plans for this year too. Thank you. Right, now we move to agenda item 8. And I think that's a verbal update on the statement of accounts. Ella, would you like to introduce yourself and give your report? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Ella Stevens. I'm the Chief Accountant of Oxfordshire County Council. So it's just a verbal update on the statement of accounts and their progress. We predict that we'll be on time for the accounts. So that is the 30th of June. So we'll be publishing for the 25-26 statement of accounts. Yes, yeah.
Bella, very short and to the point. Absolutely. We like these sort of statements. Right. Are there any comments or questions for Ella with regard to the statement of accounts? No? Right. Thank you. We will note your brief but informative comment. Thank you very much indeed. And then we'll welcome, is that Simon? I can see on the screen. Yes. From yes, good afternoon from Ernst & Young. So over to you, Simon, if we could, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just to introduce myself to start with. So I'm Simon Mathers, the external audit partner for Ernst & Young, and I'm joined today by Calthema, who's the manager for the County Council engagement. So
good afternoon, Althema. Nice to see you. Thank you.
So I will start with an apology. I don't like to start with an apology, but I will. We'd hoped to see you in person for this committee meeting, but this came into calendars quite late. So we thought we were going to be bringing our plans to the July meeting of the committee. It seems opportune to bring them now, given there is a May meeting of the committee. So we're here, but we're not in person. We will see you in person in July. So the first item you've got from us in the main agenda pack is agenda item 9 on page 97 of papers. So that's our audit planning report for the 25-26 financial year. And just to remind the committee what this sets out, it details the work we intend to undertake to be able to give an opinion on the council's financial statements and to report by exception on its arrangements for value for money. In terms of the financial statements, and the committee will be familiar, the context for the audit remains the ongoing work to rebuild assurance in local government following the issue of disclaimed opinions. And for the council, that was a disclaimed opinion in the 22-23 year. You remember that last year we were able to move really positively from a disclaimed to qualified opinion at the council, which is an essential first step on the journey to recovering assurance. We set out progress at the Council against the National Audit Office's timeline visually in Appendix A of the report on page 126 of papers. So we're saying there that the Council is on track in terms of its recovery. We also set out in the front end of the report on page 102 of papers that we're undertaking a detailed risk assessment to evaluate the risk of material misstatement in opening reserves balances at the start of the year, and then to assess management's readiness to support rebuild. We're pretty much through that risk assessment now, and we will report the results of it back to the next meeting of the committee. But our intention this time is to rebuild to hopefully a position of being able to offer unmodified assurance. That depends on the results of the audit and depends on one or two other things, technical matters, but that is hopefully where we are headed. To be able to do that, it's really essential that we get good support from management in delivering the audit. So you remember last year in our audit results report, we set out a kind of red, amber, green assessment, qualitative assessment of management's arrangements to support the audit. We repeat that in the plan on page 127 of your papers. So to support progress and to get back to hopefully, and I make no promises, an unmodified opinion, it's really important there is a continued focus on those areas in the table there that require improvement. Last year, we raised recommendations which were accepted. Again, we will follow up on whether those have been implemented. I will stop there in terms of an overview, and I'll pass over to Calthema, who's going to talk about the risks impacting this year's financial statements audit, which are summarised on page 104 and 105 of your papers.
If I could just respond to your opening remarks, though, if I could, please, because you've mentioned the rebuilding assurance and the fact on page 127, this requires improvement. And I see that there have been a management response, and that's given on pages 132 and 133. So I think committee members need to just want to highlight that for committee members if they haven't read that bit and seen that there's One thing I do note as well is that the new bill provides that the council must have an audit committee and that at least one member of that committee should be an independent person. Well, I'm delighted to say that we have 2 independent members who are both here this afternoon. I'm delighted to see you. Thank you. So, sorry, Martina, can I just pass back to you now? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. As Simon indicated,
We can hardly hear
Struggling
you.
to hear you there, Calthema.
Could you turn your microphone up a bit louder for us, please? Thank you.
you hear me now?
That's better. Thank you, Calthema.
Thank you. Sorry for that. So I will cover pages 104 and 105. So these pages summarize the key audit risks identified for the year and highlights any changes compared to prior year. You will note that there were no change in the risk level or area of focus for the current year. So the first risk is management override of control. This is a fraud risk. This is a presumed risk across all audits, so it's not isolated to the council. So even without specific indicators, we are required to perform certain procedures, which we will do mainly around journal testing. The next one is fraud in the revenue, fraud risk in revenue and expenditure recognition. So in the public sector, the focus is not only on revenue recognition, but also the manipulation of expenditure. And here the main concern is inappropriate capitalization of expenditure. So our audit, our focus area will be around that. The next item is a risk of material misstatement, which is the valuation of property, plant and equipment. So these are material balances in the county council. And therefore, any misstatement could result in any error could result in a material misstatement. In addition, valuations rely on expert judgment and assumptions underlying data, and that's why we consider this a risk of material misstatement. I want to highlight that there was, as management was aware, there was an update to the SIPFA code and the Bulletin 22 specifically regarding the valuations and the fact that there'll have to be a 5-year rolling valuation with indexation in between. So based on discussion with council, they will be adopting the 5-year rolling program for asset valuation, and they will be valuing a third of the assets in the current year with an indexation in the next 2 years. I guess, again, we want to highlight that management make sure that they follow the guidance so that they're not in contravention of the code. And then finally, on page 105, it's just the pension liability valuation risk. Again, the risk is mainly due to the assumptions that's used in determining the valuation of the pension liability. I will hand over to Simon quickly to go through anything else on risk.
Thank you, Calthema. So there is one further matter on risk I will just bring to the committee's attention. So I think the committee will be aware of the high needs support grant that's been announced by government that will cover, is likely to cover 90% of the dedicated school grant overspend at the end of the year. We are considering whether we need to raise a further fraud risk around classification of spending that doesn't actually relate to GSG to DSG, the incentive being that it's 90% potentially funded now. So that's something that might come into our final programme of work. It will depend very much on how the deficit has tracked through the year, and I suppose the opportunity and incentive for management to do that. Just to quickly go through the remainder of the plan, and we will then stop for questions. So we set out materiality on page 105. So our overall materiality level is 24 million. If there were an error that was uncorrected above that level, that would impact our audit report. Our performance materiality, so that is the level that we consider in conducting our testing, is 18 million, and the threshold for audit differences is 1.2 million. So anything above 1.2 million that's unadjusted, we report to you as the body charged with governance, and you determine whether you are satisfied with management's reasons for not adjusting. We've fully completed our value for money risk assessment and value for money planning. So at this stage, we are not highlighting any risks of significant weaknesses in the council's value for money arrangements. We'll update that again in the summer. If that changes, we'll report it back to you in our audit results report. The final thing I did want to mention on the county council plan is the timeline. So we are intending to have all work complete by the end of this November. So the statutory backstop for completion of work, it's pulled forward by a month from the prior year, so it's now the end of January 2027, but it's our plan intention to have work completed fully significantly in advance of that. It will be a challenge, it will require the cooperation of officers, but that is what we would like to do. I will stop there and take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. Yes, we have Councillor Rawlings, and just to say that it would be great for you to complete by November and for us to see you then again at this committee. Councillor Rawlings.
Thank you. Yeah, you make a lot in your report about the challenges of IFRS 16, which I think have been universal, and I guess I'd be surprised if you told me that there was any council that sailed through that without a blip. But I'm interested to the extent that, yes, okay, last year was the kind of first time through that. Do you really think that that's going to be an ongoing problem this year, or based on what you saw and based on our experience, do we really think that's going to be an ongoing problem and something which will continue to attract a scale fee variation? I'm also interested to note the points about rebuilding assurance on reserves and getting to an unqualified opinion. I hope that we'll be able to do that this year, and from what I can see, that's on track. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
Okay, so just to take those points in turn. So in relation to IFRS 16, yes, there were pervasive issues across councils in relation to its implementation. So the county council was certainly not on its own in experiencing difficulties in that area. Will there be a recurrence this year? I don't know until we audit it. We got to a position last year where we were satisfied the issues had been resolved. So a number of councils, we can't say that. We didn't get to that end position where, you know, misstatements were identified, all of the amendments were made, and we're satisfied that there were reasonable arrangements going forward. So in that regard, the council is in a good position. Will it or won't it result in a scale fee variation? I can't answer that until we've done the work. In terms of the broader position on build back, the council's well placed. So the fact that we were able to move from a disclaimed to a qualified opinion last year is great news and a good starting position. I would very much like to be in a position where we can get you to an unmodified opinion. Obviously, there's an audit to do between now and then, so an audit can throw up anything. Also, there are, if you look at the NAO's timeline that I've set out on page 126 of your papers, that's still saying a qualified opinion in 25-26, not an unmodified opinion. So there are a few technical hurdles to overcome, but you are in the best position possible to get back to an unqualified opinion in terms of your starting point. It is relying, and I stress this in the presentation, and it's important, on the continued support of officers and the continued production of good quality draft financial statements, good working papers, and all of those things, as is our ability to complete by the end of November.
Comment on that?
Yeah, I was just going to turn to Bella. Thank you.
I think we will try our best, but we are there, and we've got the team, and we're ready, and we plan the resource behind what the plan is following currently.
Councillor John Shearing.
Thank you, Chair. Could I draw your attention to page 127, Simon, please? You've right at the bottom of that page, you've stated that there were a moderate numbers of misstatement in disclosure. Could you clarify that one, please? Whether that was a misstatement or was there a different understanding or interpretations of a statement? Thank you.
So a misstatement in disclosure is where something in the financial statements doesn't meet the disclosure requirements of the financial reporting framework or is otherwise inaccurate. So there were a moderate number of those kind of misstatements in the draft accounts submitted for audit last year. I would say that a large, and we do say in the report that a large proportion of those related to IFRS 16. So a large proportion of those were around the transitional disclosures that were required when IFRS 16 were implemented. We're over that now because last year was the transitional year. So hopefully that will be addressed and we're not reporting the same thing again in 25-26.
Anything else? No. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments for Simon? Right. Anything else officers want to highlight at all? Kathy?
Can I just come in to just comment then that in response to Councillor Sherry's last question, we did add in all of those additional the information into the account, so there's no reason why we would go backwards from that. So unless there was anything new that would need to be added, we'd assume we'd work on the premise that we would provide all the information that was in the final statement of accounts for 24/5 again in 25/6, just to provide some reassurance on that one.
And I would agree with that. So those disclosure misstatements were corrected last year. Some of them are transitional only, so only apply to last year. But the things that continue to apply, hopefully that will be the starting point for the council in 25-26.
Right. Thank you. Well, that's some good news. Thank you. All noted. Committee happy to note this report and comments made this afternoon. Thank you. We then move on to agenda item 10, which is the External Auditor's Pension Fund and Audit Planning Report. I think this is Carthema to take us through.
Now this one will be me again, Chair, if that's okay.
Perfect. Of course it is, Simon. Go ahead.
Okay, so again, this is in a supplemental paper pack. I think the main council audit plan you got twice in the main papers. So this is in a supplemental paper pack. So in terms of what the plan does, well, it's similar to the county council. We don't have VFM responsibilities directly in respect of the pension fund, so the pension fund plan is all around the work that we need to undertake to be able to give an opinion on the pension fund financial statements. The PF audit, the pension fund audit, is also not impacted by a rebuild, and we've got a history of unqualified opinions, so we're in a good position there. However, given we give the pension fund audit opinion together with the county council audit opinion, we need to make sure that the pension fund work is done on time and also works to that end of November deadline. As I say, we've got a good track record, so we set out the assessment of arrangements supporting the audit on page 8 of the supplemental papers. There was only one area there that requires improvement, so a good starting point. There is one issue to bring to the committee's attention, so it is important this is maintained, and there have been some challenges for the fund at the planning stage of our audit, so relating to staff turnover, and there's then one potential complication at the execution phase around the closure of one of the fund managers for pooled investments and transition to a new manager. We've been talking to the fund about those matters. We're content they are being taken seriously, and we are content at the moment that they won't impact on timetables or timescales for delivery, but they are things that we just wanted to flag. In terms of risks impacting the pension fund audit, which are on page 9 of the supplemental papers, I'll take you through those briefly. So again, we have the presumptive risk of management override of controls. As Carthema said, for the county council audit, this isn't something that's specific to the pension fund or the county council. It's something that auditing standards require us to assume across all of our engagements. So we must assume that management will seek to override controls and/or commit fraud in the reporting of financial position and performance. The next risk, which we consider to be a significant risk, is the valuation of hard to value level 3 investments. So these are investments that are not actively traded on an open market, and therefore there isn't observable market data to inform their valuation. The pension fund does hold quite a high proportion of assets in level 3. Our approach is as it would have been in previous years. So we look at the last audited accounts that underpin the valuation of those assets for each fund manager. Where the opinion date for those accounts is not coterminous with the opinion date for the pension fund, we project forward the valuation to the end of the year. We have a risk material statement around valuation of level 2 investments. So these aren't as hard to value as level 3, but there is some data that is not observable from a market. Again, what do? We take a similar approach as we do for the level 3 investments. The final area of risk is around IAS 26 disclosures. So that's the actuarial present value of promised retirement benefits. That number is informed by the fund's actuary and is subject to estimations and assumptions. So we rely on the work of our own experts to assess the work of the actuary and therefore opine on the accuracy of the disclosure. Materiality for the audit is set out on page 10 of the supplemental papers. So overall materiality, which is based on the net assets of the fund, is 36.5 million. Performance materiality, so the level at which we undertake our procedures, 27.4 million, and then our threshold for audit differences is around about 1.8 million. I don't think there's anything else that I want to particularly draw your attention to on the pension fund audit or plan, so I'll stop there and take questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. Councillor Lee Rawlins, press for the case.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, one thing that does pop out is on page 7, you talk about the lack of preparedness for the audit and 2 key staff being missing. And on page 8, that results in problems over the quality and timeliness of the evidence required. I understand that in terms of what happened before. I do think it's reasonable to ask whether we have now dealt with that problem and whether we have the resource in place so that we'll be able to provide assurance and actually efficiency in terms of the audit fees and scale variation.
Thank you, Councillor Rawlins. Councillor Bowley, please.
Councillor Rawlins, that relates to the sad death of one of our colleagues. So that's where the gap has come in, which has been addressed with temporary resource. So something completely unexpected, yes.
Thank you. Is there anything else, officers? Oh, for Councillor Fauntleroy. Councillor John Sherry.
Thank you, Chair. If I draw your attention, committees, to page 15 or page 157 of the bundle, there is an unfunded liability of £29.1 million was recognised and identified in there. Has that been addressed? So it is on page 157.
So I think that's the county council plan.
That's the previous report.
Oh, is it? My
Not
apologies.
official one,
Okay.
yeah, okay. I think it was in twice, yeah, thank you. Any other comments or issues anybody want to raise? Or anything else Simon wanted to add at all this afternoon? But can I just say, we do hope to see you in person. Will that be at the July meeting or?
Yeah, that will be at the July meeting. As I say, we would have been there. Well, we'd intended to bring these plans to the July meeting. This came into calendars quite late. We thought it was opportune that you received the plans, given they are written as early as we can. We'll be there for July, and in July we'll report to you the results of the risk assessment and rebuild that I was talking about in the county council plan.
Right, and that's good. And then we hope for the conclusion in November.
Yes.
The audit. Right, that would be on time then. Thank you. Is that all, committee? Thank you. Can we note the comments and discussions that we've had this afternoon? And thank you both for coming online to join us this afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We'll now move to agenda item number 11, please. Annual governance statement. Over to you, Lisa. I'm sorry for calling you Councillor earlier. Head of Legal.
Just the not democratically elected as you are. Thank you, Chair. This report is the annual report that you receive in relation to the annual governance statement by nature of its title. And it's been brought together from quite a considerable amount of work that is undertaken across the authority. So it's in your papers, the report at page 189 to 192, and the annual governance statement itself from pages 193 to 241. It's a really important document because you'll have heard from the external auditors, and you've seen in the last papers that you've had that the annual governance statement forms part of the external auditor's assessment of value for money and their considerations when they're looking at that. So what they're looking at is, does this annual governance statement as presented and agreed represent is a reflection of what they see as they undertake their external audit of all of our work. So the annual governance statement that you've got before you follows the current SIPFA and SOLIS guidance, and it follows the principles set out in the Delivering Good Governance Local Government Framework 2016. The SIPFA guidance was last updated in May 2025, so it takes account of that update. And also we set out the development of a local code of governance, which we obviously score ourselves against. And the annual governance itself, at paragraph 8 of your report, you'll see that it includes an opinion on the council's governance arrangements for 2025-2026. So importantly, as with a lot of things that come before this committee, it's a backward look over the previous year, so not what's current and not what's going forward into 26-27. And we also, obviously, it will need to be updated to reflect the council election today. So it's being produced with the expectation of the leader signing it, but the name will be changed in the document. It contains also a review of the effectiveness of the council's governance arrangements, conclusion around those arrangements, a review of the actions that were identified last year as needing attention in the action plan, and then setting forward an action plan for this coming year, and then a summary of the council's governance framework, which again was at 31st of March 2026. Just bring to your attention the point that the Chief Internal Auditor made in relation to one change, which is on paragraph 63, where we now have the IBC assurance report. So there's just going to be a change that will reflect the report for 2025-26 concludes that the key financial systems and system controls were suitably designed and operated effectively. Whilst exceptions were noted, there was no notification of any material concerns. So I'd just ask the committee to consider the annual governance statement before them with that one amendment to reflect something that's happened since the papers were published. So I'm happy to take any questions, and the recommendation for the committee is to approve the annual governance statement, and obviously if there's anything that is required to be changed following the comments of this committee, to delegate to me the authority to make any necessary amendments after consulting with the leader and the chief executive and the section 151 officer. And as we've got a new leader, what I would do is undertake to brief them in relation to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So as has been stated, this is a backward look at our governance and reviewing the effectiveness of the organisation during 25-26. I have Councillor James Fry first to speak.
Thank you very much. One comment. On page 201, our strategic plan, it talks about a fairer Oxfordshire. I was surprised not to see tackling discrimination mentioned explicitly there. That was it.
Thank you. A comment, Anita.
I think it just reflects the strategic plan, Councillor Fry. So that's as it is. Happy to take on board your comment and to consider that together with the leader.
Thank you, Councillor Ron Paxton.
Yes, paragraph 84 says the People and Culture Strategy is targeted for relaunch in March 2026. It may be my ignorance, but did that actually happen?
I'm just going to paragraph 4 just so I can. Is it paragraph 4 of the report or paragraph 4
paragraph 84.
84?
Yeah.
Sorry, of the, yeah.
Page 213.
Yeah, 213.
Sorry.
Is this linked as well? I mean, the latest employee joint consultative committee, we were talking about the fact that we'd done an award for
Yes, I
joint working with the unions and things.
Yeah, so just in terms of paragraph 84, the people and cultural strategy did have a full review in relation to, I think it was reviewed both in the development since the initial one, but also to reflect the journey that the authority is on in terms of local government reorganisation and the priorities of change that we need to consider.
Tony Rawlings, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is a very good, very thorough report. The only slight observation I have is whether from page 228 onwards, we're looking at significant governance issues for 26-27, and we include in there the safeguarding transport issue quite properly. I just wondered whether we should include the bridges issue. It may be a timing thing, but we know about it now, and it does relate to actions planned, I guess, for 26-27.
You have answered your own question, Councillor Rawlings. It is a timing issue because it will have come into this next period. But what we will be mindful of is when we're bringing together the annual governance statement, and you've already heard that there'll be a focus on that area, and it was an audit that was requested by the director. So that suggests it's an area of focus in any event, but certainly we have it in our sights.
For that update. Right. Are there any other questions or comments? I'd like to thank particularly Sarah Smith for all the work that she put into collating all this information that is in this report. I think it's an excellent report that shows how much work has been done and reviews our effectiveness as well as a council. So thank you to all those who are concerned, but particularly Sarah Smith for putting this together. Thank you. Right, Anita, sorry, anything else?
Just the recommendation, Chair, which is to approve the annual governance statement. I don't think, although I said to Councillor Fry I would raise his point with the leader of the council, it reflects at the moment the strategic plan. So I'm not, there's just the one amendment that I mentioned at the beginning. So as far as I've heard from the debate, there's nothing else to add or change.
I don't think there is. No, thank you very much. So the new leader will be signing this. Right, okay, thank you. Just to make sure that's fine. So the committee is recommended, as has been indicated by Anita Bradley, to approve the annual governance statements for 25-26, subject to the monitoring officer making any necessary amendments in the light of comments made by this committee and in consultation with the new leader of the council, the chief executive and the section 151 officer. Thank you. Is committee happy to accept? Thank you. I see no dissension. Thank you very much for that. Concludes agenda item 11, and we move on to agenda item 12, which is the Constitution Working Group report. And Councillor Stephen Gaverstaff is hopefully joining us, who chaired that working group. Stephen, are you online with us? Seeing him.
Yes, sorry.
Oh, you are there. Oh, right. Hello, Stephen. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Councillor Stephen Jackson was the councillor who chaired this working group, and we're also joined by I just couldn't remember your surname, Dave. I do apologise. By Dave Byrne, who was the senior officer as well, guiding the working group through this revision of the constitution. Several meetings were held. Do you want to start us off, Dave? And
Chair, I'm just going to just do a brief overview. Then I'll pass to Dave for the technical side of the work and to talk you through the documentation that's become ever more complex. And then Councillor Gavershat's going to obviously take the committee to give his view as the chair of the working group.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
So just in terms of the work that's been undertaken, there was a set of amendments that were made on 1st of April 2025. They came into being, and then this is the work subsequently. And we had a very interesting constitution working group where the members that had the enthusiasm and the interest went through all of the work. We as officers proposed areas that we knew needed some attention, and members again raised any issues that they wanted us to look at. So it was quite a complementary piece of work. My thanks go to Dave, who has marshalled all of the paperwork and the recorded the decisions. It forms two bases. One where I have existing delegations from council or to be able to make any amendments that relate to legislation, and then others that are required to go through council. But for transparency, the committee have everything. This type of work never ends because there's always something that will come forward and someone else will have a proposal or a suggestion. So there's also another piece of work that, whilst looking at constitutional issues recently, have brought certain points to my attention that as a monitoring officer, technically I have to change, and therefore I've put those forward at this point. They haven't been through the Constitution Working Group, although they've all been supplied to the Constitution Working Group, and I'm open to any conversations around those. So I'll just hand to Dave to explain the paperwork, and the recommendations are set out in the supplemental report, but there's a couple of typographical areas in there. So I will, before we go to the vote, make sure that members are clear on all of the recommendations.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Over to you, Dave.
Yeah, thank you. And apologies for the complexity of the papers. The recommendations that Monitoring Officer just referred to have been circulated with revised wording. And I'll start with that first, because the whole idea is to put the recommendations in at one place, taking on board the additional appendices. So if I just go through briefly the changes. So Appendix 1, as Monitoring Officer mentioned, were the ones that sit within the Monitoring Officer's delegations as specified in the Constitution. And they are wide-ranging, bringing things up to date, making some changes to wording to provide some clarity, and also reflecting the way that the organisation operates. So there's a number that you'll be familiar with that you would have seen in Appendix 1. In Appendix 2, we sort of went into some of the more, should we say, challenging areas. We discussed motions, unsurprisingly. We also looked at the key decision definition, and the suggestion there is to change it to reflect the way it operates. I mean, the current constitution talks about a percentage of a budget. I'm not too sure how many people are walking around with a calculator on a daily basis. So we've made it 1 million for revenue and 2 million for capital, just to make it clear. And we've also looked at the publication of decisions over £100,000, which is a legal requirement. It's in now in the constitution, so it reflects, again, best practice. And then turning to Appendix 3, we did indicate to the Constitutional Working Group that we were looking at the officer schema delegation, and that has now materialised, and that's included, and that reflects the management structure, but it also then provides details in relation to areas of officer responsibility. And they are really the sort of fundamental changes. I've tried to lay it out in a helpful way. Whether I got that right will remain to be seen. So each of the appendices, the amendments are numbered. There are track change documents as well that are a bit more detailed, which are annexes to some of those appendices. Hence, I think it's very good. I think this proves this is really good that we're moving to a non-paper environment, because I'm not sure how many trees would have been taken down if we'd have published this. But anyway, notwithstanding that, try to capture the information in it. So that, as I said before, there are some quite technical contract procedure rules being one, and also the officer scheme of delegation. They are presented to you in track change format, so you can see how they're going to be changed. Rather than putting it into a chart, I think it would have been too complex. So I will leave it there, if I may, and answer any questions.
You definitely may. Can I suggest, committee, that we look at Appendix 1 first? And would you like me to page it and go through it, or just? Oh, sorry. Did you want to come in first, Stefan? On this.
Yes, just.
So the committee looked at.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, quite clearly. Thank you.
Right. Sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, just very, very quickly, I'd just like to thank the committee, of course. Thank Dave for all of his work, and Anita for her valuable legal advice. Gavin as deputy chair of this meeting. Ros, you were on the committee, and also a special thanks to Brad Baines, Councillor Brad Baines, who actually went through the constitutional changes with a fine-tooth comb and actually consulted his group. As Dave has said, there are some very, very technical amendments to the Constitution, especially in the officer scheme of delegation. And we had a wide-ranging talk about motions and the timings of meetings. So I'll leave it at that for the moment. Well, you want to get through your meeting, that's why. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so could we look at Appendix 1 first? I was going to page it, but it's so long. Perhaps I'll just open up for questions or comments on Appendix 1, if I could first. That's the question. Could you introduce yourself? That's the first time you've spoken. Thank you.
So I'm just trying to re-familiarise myself with this. I'm Councillor Andrew Crichton. I represent Banbury Hardwick. I haven't really got a lot to say, really. I've sifted through Appendix 1 quite a few times. I couldn't find anything objectionable, really. Everything seemed reasonable and above board. So I just wanted to thank officers and members of the working group for their work on it, really. I didn't really have anything to add. I know it's not very exciting, so.
Thank you. Thanks, are always welcome, actually, to our office. Thank you. Councillor Ron Gladstone, please.
Yes, it's suddenly got smaller on me. Yes, looking through this, I was particularly concerned because I'm on the committee of the Oxfordshire Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee, where you suggest a minor change. But looking through it, I realised I was getting confused between the ICB Scrutiny Committee and the Oxfordshire Scrutiny Committee. It was headed Oxfordshire, but when I looked at the detail, it's talking about the Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire and Berkshire West Committee. So just a couple of comments. I would like to look at this in a bit more detail, I think, but also it will now be the Thames Valley Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which hasn't yet been formed, but the Thames Valley ICB has been formed, so it is going to change anyway. But I must admit, I looked at the Constitution this morning around this whole area, and I thought that they might be getting the committees confused. But I will look at it because it definitely needs changing.
You want to look at this again, or sorry,
I was just going to ask if you could just refer me to any particular paragraph that you were concerned with.
It was the one that was being changed. It's in part 6.1b. and it's on page 262.
Thank you.
Item number, it's number 63, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Which is headed Oxfordshire Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee, but seems to refer to the Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire and Berkshire West Committee.
Yes, I mean, the position that we've taken as a council at the moment is that we've kept reference to the Bob Hosk, as everyone knows it as, because I felt that until the Thames Valley was called properly, you might want that opportunity. So it was in the council's political balance numbers for that committee. So we took the view that we would just continue with that. So I don't think there's confusion about that. It just hasn't yet been changed to reflect Thames Valley, which as a overview and scrutiny, as you said, doesn't yet exist.
If I can just,
Thank you. Yeah, please.
I think Councillor Batson, it may also be, I was trying to be, I won't say clever, I was trying to be helpful by referring to the relevant part of the Constitution. And then it talks about paragraph 18. So it may well be that it looks out of kilter, but it's not. We'll certainly check it. And as I think the monitoring officer has indicated, Constitution has to be kept under constant review. So if there are any changes, we will of course pick that up.
So it looks like that when the Thames Valley Scrutiny Committee comes into being, it'll be changed in our constitution. It has to be changed in our constitution, and we have given leave to our head of legal to make those changes as and when, and then report it back either to this committee and also to full council. I suppose but that's such a minor thing. If it's just a change of name, does that have to come through the committee again? Or
I can do change of names of things. If there's a terms of reference, though, to take into the Constitution, then that would be come through this committee. But I try to do as much as possible to keep it up to date, because people get very sort of annoyed, I suppose, if what they're reading online is not reflective of what is current. But it's quite, a difficult task to keep it completely up to date all the time. But we're keeping an eye out as to what happens with Thames Valley. And indeed, if members of this committee hear anything and want to alert us to anything, then please do so.
Well, thank you for that offer. I think that's right. That's good. In fact, actually, so we could feed that back to our group members. That would be useful. That comment, please. Thank you, Councillor Lee Rawlins.
Thank you, Chair. Having used the council, I feel that the amount of time, the number of people, the value of that time is very, very high, and I often feel that it's not well used. I'm pleased to see the references that if similar questions come up, they will be combined to use time more efficiently. That's good. I feel that the time of council should be used for where full council is required, and it does seem to me that some members' questions could easily have been dealt with through a cabinet member or through reference to cabinet, and should only come to council, in my estimation, if a satisfactory response has not been obtained. So I question whether time is used efficiently there. But obviously the review group have, I guess, considered all these matters, and so we are where we are. I've got a more substantive change I want to make a proposal on Appendix 3, but yeah, that would just be my comment in regards to questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Do you want to turn your microphone off? Thank you very much. Yeah. Right. Is there anything else then on Appendix 1, or can we agree that and move on? Thank you. I don't see anything more. David, do you want to take us through Annex 2, which I believe starts on 279 of our pages?
Yes, I will, Chair. Yes, sorry. So Annex 2, which is on Appendix
279?
279, yes. Annex 2. Just note of that.
Yeah, this is the Oxfordshire County Council's contract procedure rules.
Yes. So these are changes that have been recommended by the legal officer who leads on contract procedural. So these are again changes that bring the constitution up to date, reflect legislative changes and also operations within the council. They're there, as I said before, presented in detail because it's quite a complex area, so it's more transparent to present it this way.
Thank you. Do we have any people wishing to, members wishing to speak? Yes, Councillor John Sherry. Can you give the page that you're referring to? I think that's helpful.
Yeah, sure. Page 288 and then page 289. So paragraph 5.4. So I was wondering whether we could impose or perhaps insert cabinet somewhere in there to allow for overseeing of the cabinet, or at least the lead cabinet member to be able to have a say in that process. Is there a mechanism or a procedure at the moment that will consult either the cabinet or lead cabinet members in that?
Anita Bradley.
The value is between 25,000 and the current Procurement Act threshold. That wouldn't entail cabinet involvement at that level of value. The cabinet involvement would be at £1 million, but that doesn't mean that a contract at that value would not be discussed with the relevant portfolio holder. But I would not be proposing to the committee that we build in another layer of governance on it, because all of the checks and balances are in there, and that the value, bearing in mind the number of contracts that the organisation has. And indeed, I know there's another conversation going on from the commercial and procurement side of the business that in fact the values, we should push them up higher. And I may come back to you at a later point, not from cabinet involvement, because that links to the key decision level. But I would not recommend to the committee another layer of governance at this point.
I think that's a follow-up question.
Thank you, Anita, for clarifying that one. I think that's a reasonable position to be in. Just one additional question. Page 291, paragraph 9. So there has been amendments from 25,000 to £50,000 in there. What's the logic in there? What's the reason that we've increasing the amount? And I think there was also differences between paragraph 5.4 and paragraph 9.1. Any reason?
Paragraph 5.4 is a scale between 25,000 and the thresholds, which are, I can't remember off the top of my head, they're in the paragraph in the table below. So the thresholds are 207,720. That includes VAT for goods and services, works and concessions 5,193,000, and light touch contracts, which involve quite a lot of our people services, 663,540. So that's a scale. And then the paragraph 9.1 are about the terms and conditions relating to a contract over £50,000. So they're not directly comparable. It's slightly different things. And the increase in value is to ensure that we are doing the work that's needed at the point that it adds value. So whilst £25,000 of public money is a significant amount of money, we have to bear it in mind in a risk-based approach as to the value of contracts that we deal with, involving the procurement service, the legal service, and those that the services can do themselves. That doesn't mean there aren't checks and balances on them, but we need to make sure that the services that specialise in contracts are involved at the point where they can add value. So that's why the differences are.
So just follow-up question, another one. Who made the recommendations to increase the amount? Fine, good.
It will come from within the services, and it will come from the, as Dave said to the committee, it came from the principal solicitor that's involved in all of the contract work for the council.
Very much. Dave, did you want to come back?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point, and I think, as obviously the monetary officer mentioned at the beginning, the thing about the Constitution is you can't read, although people try to, the sections in isolation. And if you then try to get a sentence that covers all the parts, it becomes really, really complicated. So the contract procedure rules relate to the financial procedure rules, which also then relates to key decision. It's all interlinked. So we are presenting them in isolation, but it's all connected. There's a bit of an Eric Morganism in there somewhere, but you know the point I'm trying to make. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments from committee members on that's Appendix 2? No, shall we move to Appendix 3 then, if we could, please? This is the supplementary papers that we had, and I think some people have them as numbered pages.
So, Chair, we've just done Appendix 1, Annex 2.
Yes.
So I think there is an Appendix 2 as well.
Appendix 2 as well. I do apologise. Yes, you're right, which starts on page 307. You're right. Thank you. Here we go. I've got it. Appendix 2, 307, please. Thank you.
So yes, Chair. So these are the more, if you like, substantial changes. And I'm frantically now going to page 307, scrolling down. It would have been easier to have a hard copy, wouldn't it, really? Despite my comment about saving trees.
So it starts with the change, the appointment of honorary aldermen women,
yeah,
and the granting of freedom of the county, because we didn't have anything in our constitution until this was mentioned and picked up. So it's here from the start. So that's the start of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's a mixture of technical stuff and, if you like, as the chair has just mentioned, the appointment of honorary aldermen and women. We then go into part 1.3, key decision making, where the key decision definition is tightened up, and actually, the Constitution, I found when I originally read it, a little bit confusing as to who could and could not take a key decision. So we've tightened that up. Key decisions are taken by members unless delegated to officers. So that's now explicit. It was in there, but maybe not in the right place. So we've covered that and made an addition in terms of all key decisions should be published. So again, highlighting those points. Brief change to executive and non-executive decisions. We introduced the requirement to publish decisions over £100,000. And then we talk about time and place of meetings, which was a discussion that CWG discussed in quite detail. And we got a consensus in terms of agreement. Also some reference to the chair's discretion in relation to guest speakers. There is chair's discretion in the Constitution anyway, but it's about, the timings that may be afforded to someone who is making a specific presentation to council. Recording delegations, again, is touched on. And the last 2 points are regarding contact between members and officers. This is where I would have liked to have just put, please exercise common sense, but that probably wouldn't have been sufficient. So we've just basically spelled out that you don't automatically refer information on, and we've done it for both officers and members, just really tidying the wording. Thank you.
I don't want to start discussions again that were held at the working committee. And if Councillor Ted Fenton was here this afternoon, he would agree with that. We had one previous audit committee where the working group had made recommendations, and the committee was just to hopefully just endorse them. but it opened up a whole new discussion, unfortunately, with regard to number of signatures required for a petition to be heard. I hope that we're not going to be doing that this afternoon, but it is obviously open to members to raise report comments that they'd want to, perhaps from their own group, or significant things they'd like to possibly disagree with. We have Councillor Stefan Guyasat with us still. Thank you. But we've got Councillor David Wren first, please, if we could. Thank you. David, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm not going to get into anything like you've just described there. It really is, it's probably a typo, but I just thought I'd raise it while, as I noticed it on page 313, 9.5 Protocol of Member Office Relations, the last sentence, if in doubt, office should seek the express concern of the member concerned. I assume that should be something like agreement. So whatever the appropriate word is, I just noticed it, Chair, so I thought I'd point it out while I had the opportunity.
Apologies to members, which is a good job that I revised the recommendations that I'm suggesting members to approve. Thank you.
Sorry, which number was that? Was that on 313? Was that 12 or 13?
13, the very last sentence.
13. Sorry. Oh, consent. Right. Okay. Thank you. Noted. Is there anything else, Councillor Leroy?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to take us to page 323, where we talk about changes in leadership, and essentially on.
Sorry, I think that's a different annex, isn't it?
Sorry, are we not yet on appendix 3?
Appendix 3. We're on appendix 2 at the moment.
Oh, I'm still finishing that. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Sorry.
Gone ahead too far.
We'll come back to that.
I'll come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that. Thank you. Right. Is there anything else on this Annex 2, which goes to 313, the last page? No? I'm happy to change that one thing that David raised as well too. Dave, want to take us on to the next one, which is Appendix, if I'm going to get this right. Appendix 3, starting on page either 5 or 319, depending on which printout you've got. Is that correct, Dave?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay.
I'm just now scrolling back to it.
These the additional changes for approval this afternoon.
Yes, so a mixture of changes, some of which touch on the point that Councillor Rawlings was about to make in terms of the appointment of leader. So the first one is in relation to the minerals and waste plan. This is just a factual change to reflect legislative changes. The second one is in relation to approval of minutes. I mean, legally, we shouldn't be taking verbal reports at meetings and or have matters arising from minutes. That can be dealt with elsewhere. When it comes to making decisions on minutes, it's in relation to approving the accuracy, and that is it. So that's been amended. And we've also then got a change in terms of the number of members who can requisition a council meeting. The 72 Act says 5 members, so we've amended that. And then we get into the appointment in relation to an explanation in relation to the leader and talking about term of office. So these changes makes the position, I suppose, legally compliant, is what I've said, and in accordance with the 72 Acts as well as the Local Government Act 2000. And it covers a number of issues also in relation to council passing a resolution to remove the leader, which of course it can do under certain circumstances. So we've set that out. The deputy leader was referred to in the Constitution, but it was grouped up with appointment of other cabinet members. So we've separated the two just to make that clearer. And 7 and 8 relate to the officer structure and the officer scheme of delegation, which I've referred to. and they're detailed in annexes 1 and 2, which are quite detailed. They're the track change reports. And then the last one again refers to the issue of information being presented to where members can request an item on an agenda, and we're making sure that that allows us a report to be prepared where it's required. So that's quite a whirlwind tour of the changes.
Yeah, thank you. So that last one was about notice of request is received by the property officer by 5 p.m. on the 20th, not the 10th working day before the meeting of a committee or subcommittee, to enable a report to be prepared. So that's giving an extra 10 working days, I believe. Is that right? Yeah, working days before the start of the meeting. So it's quite a substantial change. Councillor Lee Rawlings, I know, is keen to get in with a suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, on 323 and 322 and 323, we're considering a change of leader, and in my view, it's important that there's not an interregnum. On page 322, we talk about the leader is elected for the full term of the council, normally for 4 years, but of course, it is possible that they resign from office, that they're no longer a councillor, or ultimately that their term expires on the first meeting of the new council, and whatever's necessary is dealt with there. And finally, that they could be removed from office by resolution of the council. When D, removal from office, applies, due notice has to be given of motions, and then if in fact they are removed from office at that particular meeting, then an election is immediately held. There is no interregnum. But on A, B and C, resignation, no longer a councillor, or expiry date, we then go on to 323 and we say that in those circumstances, an election to fill the vacancy will be taken at the next ordinary meeting of the council or at an extraordinary meeting of the council. And my simple suggestion is that instead of just saying will be taken at the next ordinary meeting, we insert current or next meeting, so that it is possible for a leader to stand down in a meeting, and it is possible to have an election in that meeting, so that there is no interregnum. Obviously, when we have, as we do every year, or most years, elections going around which involve members, whether directly or indirectly, it's an exhausting process. They collapse at the end of it, having striven to do whatever they can do in the election. They need some time to get up and recover and come together and have discussions about leadership. And then ultimately, because of the timetable of events, suddenly there's a meeting upon them. This simple change would enable a much slicker process and would avoid the nonsense that we had to get into today.
Anita.
Thank you. It won't surprise members to hear that I've done a considerable amount of work around this recently. In terms of the point that Councillor Rawlings makes, if it wouldn't have covered the situation we had, because we didn't have a resignation at a meeting. We had a resignation after a meeting. So in terms of the issue. So in terms of,
do you turn your mic off, because it gets a bit of an echo? Thank you.
So in terms of the situation, if you had a resignation within a meeting, my advice to the committee is that the current legislation, which means that the deputy leader would step up, would cover that situation, and that's what the legislation does, because you would. What's really important, and I will take this away. I'm not prepared to agree an amendment to this at this meeting today without having done the work behind it. Is that it's really important that there is continuity of governance. And I know we had a situation where there was a gap, but the leadership of the council was covered under the legislation by the deputy leader assuming that responsibility, which is what the legislation provides for. But if you had the situation where someone resigned at a council meeting, you immediately had to appoint a new leader. You could have that effectively at every council meeting. I'm not saying we would, but you've got to guard against having inconsistency in leadership. So I just need to take away and look at the legal situation, which I haven't had the opportunity to do before this point's raised today.
Councillor Glavin-Nick, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I believe in this instance that the issue was that electing a new leader could not be done at the annual full council meeting as opposed to any general one, and therefore it might make sense to add the same wording on the annual general meeting as is on all the other meetings that allow the election of a leader to be held. And I think from what I've been told today, that was the key issue behind having to call the extraordinary meeting today, as opposed to it being pre-announced prior to last week's full council, and therefore being able to be resolved at last week's full council because the wording wasn't there that would allow that.
From the council meeting today, I've been asked to provide an advice to council about the situation, so I'm not intending to deal with that here at this meeting because I need to make sure that I'm covering all of the points that I need to cover. It's around legislation, good governance, but also the ability to put anything onto an agenda once that agenda has already been published. The only way would be if it was considered to be urgent, but when the legislation covers the provision, then the urgency isn't satisfied.
Councillor Stephen Jefferson, do you want to come in at this point too?
Yeah, I was just saying that it's very helpful of the committee to actually make suggestions, but as Anita says, due process must happen in this particular case. And if there is going to be a substantial change, then of course the Constitution Committee needs to be reformed and then to look at it so that all parties and all councillors and all groups can actually consider any changes. So certainly not for this meeting. Thank you.
Yes, I think there's a consideration of national legislation, and I think given the seriousness of changing the Constitution, which is a serious matter of governance and so forth, we can't take a decision this afternoon on that change. But thank you, Councillor Lee Rawlings, for your suggestion. I think we need to give time to our legal team to look at the suggestion of changing for an annual government's an annual full council meeting, because that was what it would be, and also to the suggestion about changing for a ordinary meeting. I do take on board what Nita has said about having good governance and covenants of being able to cover the leadership role if that leader has an accident, death and so forth. That is why we have a deputy leader in place to take on those roles if there should be some unfortunate reason for the leader's post to be vacant for any length of time. But I think we should take legal advice on this. If you'd like to add anything else this afternoon, please do so. But I would like to give Anita the chance and the legal team to look at this, and indeed the Constitution Working Group, should that then reform later this year.
I'm completely content with that, but I think it would be helpful to give an indication from this meeting. We clearly have got a flaw in what exists presently. It wasn't possible at the annual meeting to have an election, which caused the whole problem in the first place. And so it would be helpful to provide an exceptional means by which that happens. Of course, you're right, Chair, to mention that within those options, you could cease to become a councillor by having the misfortune to die. That could happen, but then it would naturally fall to the next meeting in that case, assuming you don't die in the chamber. So the proper procedures and provision for that, i.e. the deputy stepping up and the interregnum being closed as quickly as reasonably possible, would occur. But what we saw today was much more along the line, at the annual meeting, was much more along the lines of something foreseeable. It's foreseeable that a leader will choose to resign, and it should be within our constitution to have a smart way of dealing with that. And it seems to me at the moment that there's a gap. I don't know what other members think.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm going to go back to Anita if I could, please.
Just, it's a question of timing, and that's what the issue was. It's a question of timing. So I just need to reflect on what you've said. If I can resolve it, then I will. But obviously we've done everything with close consultation with the groups. So it's, you know, what I want to do is ensure, and obviously feeling was running quite high today. So I need to make sure that I consult with all groups in relation to anything that I'm proposing. So I think what I will undertake to do is, if I can do anything before the 30th of June, then I certainly will. If I can't, then we can bring it back in September. And I'm not sure that we'll be facing the same situation in the next couple of months, but
thank you for that, and thank you, Anita, for explaining that too. Right, committee is asked to endorse the changes as we have them and have laid out, and the Constitutional Working Group has gone through. Is committee happy to accept those changes, including noting? So always the Constitution is under review. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. So yes, and to note, in fact, actually, the working group has recommended that we change to a 10 o'clock start in the morning rather than 10:30, which I think is important to agree.
The monitoring officer.
Yes, I'm sure that will be minuted as such. Thank you. And we had agreement from that today. Thank you. Right, thank you, committee. Can we now close the item agenda 2012 and move to agenda
can I
item?
just check that the committee are content with the recommendations that appeared in the addenda and have been circulated to all members?
Yeah,
thank you.
And I didn't see any dissension, so I was taking that as agreement. Thank you very much. I'm seeing nods around the table. I don't see any dissent. So yes, those are agreed. Sorry. Thank you, Stefan, for joining us as well online this afternoon. Okay, right. I've had some advice from our committee clerk to perhaps swap agenda item 13 and 14. So we'll look at the audit working group update first. If that's possible. Thank you, Dave Burns, for attending this afternoon as well. I do appreciate that. So we're looking at agenda item 14 first, which is the report of the working group from the 25th of March. Sarah, do you want to take us through this one?
At the last meeting of the AWG, we met in March. You received both the audits of safeguarded transport, the audit of school attendance, both were graded red. You saw the full detailed reports, and I think we had some quite useful updates from officers in terms of where they are with the implementation of the action and the response to those audits. The group concluded that they were satisfied with the progress so far, but wanted sort of further assurances around the remaining actions and the implementation. So we've scheduled that both of those audits come back again to the October audit working group. You also had a further update of strategic contract management, which was from an audit way back in 24-25, and the group was satisfied with that in terms of implementation, and that's just going through the routine internal audit follow-up process now. So yeah, it's really just that those are going to come back to October.
Our committee content that those two items go back for further investigation and reassurance to the October AWG. I'm seeing nods of assent, so thank you for that, Sarah. And I think we note and the recommendation of that report. Thank you.
There was some suggestion that we change the membership in relation to our co-optees. I don't know if that's still the intention.
Oh, right. Yes, that's true. I had forgotten that. Kate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to formally mention that I have reviewed the time commitment for the working group and I'm not able to attend I don't think in person now because of just the time required to in addition to this committee. Apologies, because sounds like quite interesting work, but
it is. It's quite detailed work and looks at in depth at audit working group. Audits that have happened actually from our internal audit, and to get more reassurance actually from officers and cabinet members too, that we get to those sometimes in audit working groups. That is good. Paul, are you able to join us for the in-person on those AWGs?
Yeah, I can carry on coming.
That's wonderful, thank you. But so, Kate, just to be clear, you can join us online, or you can't join us online for those.
I could potentially join online if that's
potentially.
Yeah,
that would be helpful, particularly if you have some questions or comments that you'd like to take up with the officers on that. Sarah.
And then just the other point on the audit working group, it's just to confirm the next 3 meetings. So for the June meeting, slightly different. We sort of scheduled in the committee's self-assessment. So I don't think we want to get any other officers there apart from myself and the members. And if you're happy with the approach, I'll send around the self-assessment documents in advance. That will hopefully make good use of your time on the day. And then September, we've decided for the highways contract management and the bridges audit. And then obviously October, supported transport and school attendance. December's not yet booked, but
I miss it. 17th of June, the AWG, the first one.
17th of June, 2nd of September, and I'll have to refer to Jack for October. I can't remember.
Right, I might need to give my apologies for the 17th of June. With my new role, and I think I've got to cover one of the chair's invites, possibly. So if I can't make it, I will let you know and invite another member to take the chair of that working group.
And you could potentially send some comments in advance as well.
I can
send the
some
document
comments in
or
advance.
give me a call separately. Yeah.
Okay, so just to warn committee, I might not be there at the AWG in June. I might not be there, but I will have sent comments in.
I think I've got June. I know I've got the June one.
17th of June.
17th of June.
October.
17th of June, then the 2nd of September. Although Jack, I don't know if the invites have gone out yet. You've got a provisional in there.
Yeah.
For the 2nd of September. Yeah. And then October, I can't remember.
It is, yes.
Yes. And just December, we've not yet booked yet, but we can get that booked in.
Yeah. Okay, so December's date's not booked yet. Okay. Right, can we agree that then we have taken everything under agenda item 14 and then return now to agenda item 13, which is the Audit and Governance Committee work programme for 26-27. July's. You want to come in at this point, Jack? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, please. So for July, we already have Ernst & Young on there, don't we? So they're coming back for their update as indicated. One I forgot to include, apologies, is the Fire and Community Safety Annual Report, which the director will bring to committee at the next meeting in July. That's right.
Right, so just to confirm, that's the Fire and Rescue Annual Report coming to the 15th of July meeting. Sarah.
What we also try and do is think about the training for the year ahead. Now, maybe at the audit working group in June, we can think about any specific requests from the members. But we normally, prior to the January committee, have your annual treasury management training. So I don't know whether we want to just schedule that in. And then also, again, in a session prior to the meetings, you normally have a confidential session with myself as head of audit, and also a session with the external auditor as a private session. We normally do that in November. It doesn't have to be, but it would probably make sense if we schedule that in now, get it in people's calendars.
I would like to schedule that in now. I think as soon as we get these dates into the diaries, it's better. So that would be the meeting with our internal auditor is Sarah, a private meeting without other officers, just members and Sarah, and then having a private meeting with the external auditors as well in November. So that would be before we start at 1 o'clock on the 18th of November. So we'd probably start at about 12 if we could. Is that correct? We normally do, isn't it?
We normally start at 12.
Yeah. So it's a question of bringing lunch with you, I'm afraid, folks. On that day in November. We did do the same thing actually last year. Gavin.
Can we request lemon drizzle cake?
I remind members that we are still live feed, but I will do my best to get up very early on the 18th of November to cook a lemon drizzle cake to bring for members and officers to enjoy on that day. I will remind Sarah that we are still live with this meeting, and I'm not going to confirm. Yes, sorry, and we have another officer, Kate, wanting to come.
Not cake related. I'm going back a little step. I've just noticed on the agenda for the 15th, the full plan for the 15th of July, we've got the assessment of the council's financial management controls and governance. I sort of did that more as a one-off last year, just to set out where we were for most of you as sort of new committee members. I can roll that forward. I can have a look at the prudential indicators. I'm just checking that that is something useful that you would like to see again. I was going to say it'd probably be a bit shorter than last year because some of it I don't need to repeat again, but
that's I haven't picked up on that, Kathy. I do apologise. So assessment of the council's financial management controls and governance. Do members want to see a brief report from finance on that again this year? This coming, I see a nod, 2 nods, 3 nods.
Okay.
4 nods. Right.
Happy to do something if that's
5
useful. So okay.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So a brief report, Kathy. I think on that one. Yeah. Okay. We better have some cake that day then too, haven't we? Right. Councillor Lee Rawlins, please. Thank you.
A couple of other thoughts. I'm not sure when we're expecting to see the confirmation of the SEND situation and the funding of all of that, but that might be a material matter. And I also feel like we should have placeholders for LGR through here. We're expecting something by July. We don't know exactly when it will fall, and there's obviously resignations and all sorts of things going on at government level. But I think we should have placeholders in there so that as news evolves, then we can look at what that implies.
But I thought that would have been an all members, council members briefing rather than just audit and governance. Yeah. Okay. Nita Brown, please.
The local government reorganisation has been considered up to this point by the Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee, so I think that would continue through that route, and this committee's purpose is around the governance, so I wouldn't want to double up or duplicate. So I think it's around what governance aspects of local government reorganisation rather than the topic as a whole. So I think whilst we know that it would need to come on for governance, I don't know when the right point to consider it would be. So I wouldn't recommend putting it on as a placeholder, but just that everyone accepts that the governance aspects of local government reorganisation will come through this route.
Thing for the September 16th of September meeting, in fact, actually, because that's only got 7 items on it, agenda items. Yeah. So. Okay, thank you. Kathy.
And just to update on SEND reform, so obviously there's a lot of work going on at the moment developing the SEND reform plan. There will be an update to Cabinet in June on progress so far and what we know by that point. And obviously that will then continue on with working with the DfE advisor over the summer. So by September we should know, hopefully, what the outcome of that is. But we probably need to, if we want to do something here, need to just align with that timescale.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else to do with the committee's work programme, please, that's not PEG related? No?
I can confirm that risk management will be on the agenda.
The risk management will be there,
as well.
okay, because there was a question over that. So that's the item 4, risk management update from Louise Justin. So that's good. I'm glad to hear that's not been knocked forward again. Right, thank you. If that is everything, ladies and gentlemen, I'll bring the meeting to a close, but do give us a couple of minutes to get the live feed closed. Thank you very much for your attendance this afternoon, everybody, and for being polite to each other. It's nice to see. Thank you this afternoon. Thank you.